Hi. Welcome everybody. Sorry we're getting started a little bit later, but I think we've got some fun stuff to cover here. My name is Micah Hoffman. We're here to talk about Imposter Syndrome. This is the obligatory About Me slide. I've been working in the industry for many years. I teach SANS classes. I work for Bruce Allen Hamilton. Visit our booth, visit our recruiting thing. We've got a position open for a junior pen tester. Yeah. But that's not really why I'm here to talk to you today. All right? I want to talk to you about this guy. Anybody know who he is? Yeah. And Alfred Einstein. Thank you, sir. Yes. So Albert Einstein, right? Physicist. In fact, Albert Einstein is the quintessential physicist. If you ask somebody what does a physicist look like, you get this. How do I know? Wikipedia. Yeah. I mean, and Albert Einstein's done the amazing things, right? I mean, in the past, he did things with nuclear energy, with amazing time, space bending, and gravitational. It's amazing what he did. And yet, Albert Einstein didn't feel like his contributions to the world were really that worthy. I know this because, again, there's a quote, and that quote says, "The exaggerated esteem in which my life work is held makes me very ill at ease." Einstein said this. The man who was just an amazing contributor to how we understand the very basic part of our world, of our universe. Einstein felt like a fraud. He couldn't internalize his success. I mean, his entire life's work, by any other standard, would have labeled it a massive success. I mean, it gave us big leaps forward in how we understand things. The most important thing is that how he interpreted the success that he was getting was not representative of what the rest of the entire world thought of his work. This is something that's going to be important as we talk about imposter syndrome. I had a very big bout of imposter syndrome back in 2012. I went to DerbyCon. Anybody DerbyCon out in Louisville? Yeah, good conference. And I was out there. I think this was my first DerbyCon, and I remember going out there and listening to some of the talks. There had rock stars. There's infosec rock stars like H.D. Moore, who talks like 1,000,000 miles a second, and he talks very deep. He knows so much. He was talking carnal ownage. Chris Gates was dropping some knowledge. And I was listening to these people talk about PowerShell and scanning the entire internet in minutes. I was like, whoa, what the heck am I doing in this field? I just test web apps. That's all I do. I just test web apps. It's like, well, I don't have any O-days that I know about. I got nothing to trade on the black market. I didn't know how to program. Yeah, I knew how to do things in Bash, the born-again shell, if any Unix, Linux people out there. I could bash like a mofo. But I had no PowerShell, I had no Python, no Ruby. I couldn't hack cars, which was getting started around that time. And so my subjective perception of myself, when comparing myself to these other people, is actually quite low. In reality, though, 2012 was a great year. Objectively speaking, I had my health, my family was awesome, things were going well in my career, I had a team that was very supportive and just terrific people. But when I started comparing myself to other people, that reality that I had for myself was a little bit different. And it was so profound that I felt this overpowering burden that I'm a fraud, that I actually started looking for work outside of the infosec field. Now, I didn't find anything that was as fun and exciting and allowed me to play with electronic toys as much as I do now. So I'm still here, but I did a search, and I took a little bit of time off of work, and I started looking around for other positions. And I remember when I was doing this, I was listening to some podcast, don't remember which one, and I heard these two words, imposter syndrome. I was like, imposter syndrome? I understand imposter. I understand syndrome. Talk to me. Tell me a little bit more. And that is when things started to make sense for me personally. You see, imposter syndrome is not necessarily a psychological syndrome, something that's bad and is like a disease. It's not. It's more a collection of feelings and perceptions that you have about how the world interprets you and how you interpret the world. It was first described in 1978 in a research paper by Dr. Imes and Dr. Clancy. Dr. Clancy has done a whole bunch more work on it. And essentially what they did was they were working at Dr. Clancy started working on this when she herself, a PhD, well-respected researcher and lecturer, professor at a very prestigious university, she herself started feeling inadequate. That what she was doing was not worthy of the praise or just of recognition. So she started to talk to Dr. Imes. And they said, well, let's look into this more. And they conducted a research study of 95 women. At that time, they were mainly focused on women. They conducted a research study of 95 women that were high achieving, that were in PhD programs, even some undergraduate students. And what they found was that many times the subjective perception that their subjects had overpowered the actual real-world perception of their work. And they couldn't really figure it out. They said, well, this is an interesting phenomenon. These are interesting feelings that these people have. And what they do is they see themselves different from the rest of the world. They perceive themselves differently. Now, of course, if I'm perceiving my actions and my successes differently than you are, that might open me up to some real psychological disorders, from depression, anxiety, fear of performance, low self-confidence. And these things in and of themselves can be the symptoms of something like imposter feelings. Now, I'll tell you this, imposter feelings, they come and they go. It's not necessarily an all the time, oh my God, I feel inadequate in every aspect of my life. That's not the case. Myself, my personal journey, I actually have certain times when I feel more inadequate than others, when I feel more like a fraud than others. And that's okay. That's how I work. That's how I am. I'll tell you this, though. There were other research studies out there since 1978. And one of them found that up to 70% of people in the world, just 70% of everybody in the world, at some point in their life, feels like a fraud. Feels like, what the heck am I doing on this stage in this event? Or whatever it is that you are. Who am I to be presenting to the CEO of my company or lecturing a bunch of students? Who am I to do this? Imposter feelings. They come in a continuum. Dr. Clance went on to create an imposter feelings test that you can take online. There's a URL I'll give at the end that has some resources that you can take a screenshot of or whatever and look up. But Dr. Clance did a test, and there's a scoring mechanism there that sets people with imposter feelings into 4 distinct categories, from few to intense feelings. And as you move up that spectrum, obviously, your ability to do things, the things that you choose to do will vary. It impacts everybody, or can impact everybody. Men, women, different religions, races. It's really a universal thing. And in fact, some of the most important people that you probably recognize every day that are on your TVs, on your movie screens, they themselves have admitted to having imposter feelings. Everybody from Tom Hanks and J-Lo to Harry Potter and Liz Lemon and some other people as well. All of these people, if you Google them and imposter feelings, you'll come up with articles where they say, hey, I can't believe people still go to my movies. J-Lo was like, I sold 70 million records in a year. And still, I was like, ooh, why would people want to listen to me? Imposter feelings. Now, imposter feelings come many times. They are more intense many times during times when you have a pressure to achieve, to get a report out, to do a briefing, to do a talk, to do something that you normally wouldn't do. In fact, in one of my other talks, I gave a talk here last year, the keynote, and it was, one of the things that I said was, it's important for you to surround yourself with people smarter than yourself, because they're going to be the ones that challenge you, right? They're going to be the ones that you learn from. They're going to be the ones that make you feel inadequate. So many times what happens is that when you do surround yourself with people that are smarter than you, you compare yourself to them, much like what I did in 2012 at DerbyCon. It's like, here's where I am. There's H.D. Moore. Oh my God, what the heck is my relevance in this world? And that can be very, very discouraging. Some other times when imposter feelings might pop up is when you're starting a new task, a new project, you've got a new job. You're unsure of yourself. You maybe are lacking a little bit of confidence. All right. Here's one that might be a little bit interesting to you. The longer you are in a field, the more likely you are to have imposter feelings. And that sounds a little counterintuitive, because what we would normally expect is that the longer you are in a field, the more confident you are in your abilities to do work. Let me introduce you to another study, or another phenomenon, called the Dunning-Kruger Effect. Now, this Dunning-Kruger Effect was discovered and first noticed in Cornell University many decades ago. And here's what they studied. They noticed that they essentially had a confidence level and an actual experience level. So they went around and they interviewed people. They said, hey, you know what? Tell me, for your current job right now, where you are, how confident are you that you know what you're doing? And then they also scored them on how good they are at their work. And this is what the outcome of that looks like. So the Dunning-Kruger Effect is a phenomenon that you will probably notice. If you've been in any field for a while and you've dealt with junior people, you'll see this, all right? And if we start on the lower left, where the know-nothing and low confidence in your abilities are, we start there. Everybody starts there. I don't know anything, and I know I don't know anything. Okay, cool. But then, as junior people do, they might get in there, and in penetration testing, this is very common. They get into a place and they're like, oh, I popped a box, I got a shell, I got a cert, CEH, baby, and they are on top of Mount Stupid. Because they feel like of all the things that they know of, they rock it. And that's the case at that point in time. But to those people, you say, well, what about reverse engineering? What about hiding and invasion? What about, malware and other things? And they're like, what? And that's when they start realizing that they're going into the valley of despair, because their small little narrow world that they thought they had mastered now becomes this huge pyramid of, oh crap, I don't know half of what I thought I knew. I didn't even know there were things that I didn't know that I thought I knew. And that's where you get to the valley of despair. Now, in normal people, the valley of despair comes, you still are learning, you still are becoming competent, and you get that slope of enlightenment and eventually the plateau of sustainability, which is great. Except with imposter syndrome, that curve flatlines a little bit. So instead of me continuing to learn, I do continue to learn. And people with imposter feelings, they continue to learn and they continue to grow and attain knowledge, but their estimation of what they can do, their estimation of how confident they are that they can get stuff done, that is underestimated. And I see this a lot too. So with junior people, we sometimes see this massive overestimation in their abilities, and they don't have them. With senior people, I see an underestimation in their abilities, and they do have them. So it's kind of an interesting effect that happens here in InfoSec. And it happens in other industries as well. Yeah, that was kind of interesting. Now, one of the other things that I hear commonly about giving talks, about teaching InfoSec, about doing what other is, I'm a big proponent of working with hacker groups. I'm a member of Nova Hackers. Anybody in Nova Hackers here? Yeah, ooh, nice. Okay. So Nova Hackers is a group that we meet in Northern Virginia, and we give talks on stuff. We talk about whatever it is that we feel we want to talk about. It can be how I set up a Raspberry Pi to work with my TV system, or how I hacked an infrared camera, whatever it can be. But everybody has to participate. And so we'll say to somebody new that comes to the group, hey, it's your turn to get up on stage there. And they'll be like, I don't know anything that everybody else doesn't know. You've been doing this for 20 years. How am I going to know something that you don't know? And so what we get is this really neat kind of image. On the left is the imposter feelings mentality, where you're that red dot in the middle, and that red dot in the middle is, I don't know very much. Everybody else knows so much more than me, that if I was to speak, people would know more, and my opinions, my ideas it wouldn't reach anybody. It wouldn't change anything. It doesn't matter, because y'all already know this. The reality is much more like on the right, where everybody knows a little bit about other things. I know a little bit about reverse engineering malware, but I don't know as much as you over there, or I don't know as much as cryptography. But you, sir, you might know more about cryptography than me. And we all can share. And it's having that perception change of, you know what? Everybody has things that they don't know, that other people don't know about to share. That's what makes Nova Hackers, unallocated space in these other groups so important, is that we help everybody feel welcome. Now, imposter feelings have a cycle. And the cycle goes pretty much like this. If we start in the red area in the bottom, there's the shit. I've got a new project I have to do. It might be a new speech. It might be starting a new task at work. It might be, oh my God, I have a child now. How am I going to care for this little thing? I'm not supposed to be a daddy. Not saying that actually happened to me. Yeah, here we go. And then going around the circle, it's, oh my God, this is going to be a disaster. This is terrible. I'm going to fail at it. And then you do work. You apply yourself. You do the research or whatever, and you achieve the task. And you get to the bottom, you're like, hey, that didn't fail as much as I thought it would. That's all right. Oh shit, I have to do it again? And it's this wonderful cycle. That's the simplified version. And that's what happens many times. You do a good job speaking at a conference or on one project, and they're like, hey, Bob, you need to come over here and do this project. You did so well briefing the CEO there. Brief this, our customer CEO now. And you're like, oh, crap, I have to do it again. So that's the simplified version. The complex version looks something more like this. And again, if we start in the upper left side, you have some kind of achievement-related task. As I said, speaking on stage, talking at work, doing a new task. And then moving off to the right, you have this anxiety, this worry, this self-doubt that I could never do this. Who am I going to be to do this? With imposter feelings, the next step is very important. We either procrastinate, push it off, find other things to do. I can't tell you the number of times that I've heard people, oh, I'll finish my slides right before my talk. There's plenty of time. They have a speaker room that I can do my slides in. I'll be fine. And if we take the procrastination route, what happens is you may succeed. You may give a great talk and everything's fine. But then instead of attributing that success to you, your efforts, your knowledge, what you do say, well, that was lucky. You know, I was just lucky that I had some quiet in that room and I threw some stuff together and people liked it. The other way to do it is over preparation. These are the people that never stop editing their slides, as I was doing just in that room a little while ago. Never stop tweaking or modifying. And, ooh, this is a different perspective, or this slide's out of order. And it keeps going and going because you feel that the more work you do, the better it's going to be. And then what happens is you get success. You're like, yeah, I stood up there, managed to make some people laugh. That's great. And then at the end, you're like, you know what? That really wasn't me doing that, conveying that information. That was the overwork that I did. That was all that sacrificing of my time all throughout the week. That's what it was. That was what the success is. It wasn't mine. And so what do? The next time you have one of these tasks, you over-prepare even more. I got to prepare for a talk. I got 4 weeks I have to do way back, and I have to start doing things and outlining things, and you get this kind of ritual thing going, because that is what you attribute your success to, instead of internally. Now, with imposter syndrome, we have this wonderful, or imposter feelings, we have this wonderful kind of double-edged sword. Not only are we afraid of failing, but we're also afraid of succeeding as well, because fear of failure means you didn't prep enough, right? Or you didn't put enough into it. Fear of success is, oh crap, I got to do this again? And that can be equally as debilitating. So that leads to a failure to try. These are things, I was reading some articles about this that said that this happens a lot with women nowadays, where they will have some imposter feelings. They get put into a place where they have to present or something, and they achieve success or failure there, it doesn't matter. But the next time that they are going to be put in a situation, they might not even apply for that speaking position or apply for a promotion. In fact, one of the things that is very common for anybody with imposter feelings is that they don't put themselves in the situation where they might get rejected or get accepted. Because again, it stirs those feelings in them. I can't tell you the last time, I can tell you the last time I did a WebEx for SANS. You know, they're like, hey, would you like to do a WebEx? Like, yeah, that sounds great. And then after committing to it, the date, I'm like, oh crap, I'm going to be speaking to people, and then those people are going to hear me, and what if I don't give them enough information, or what if they already know what I'm... And you have that self-doubt, and the cycle starts. And that leads me to my next point, is that many people with imposter feelings have negative self-talk. That's inside of our brains. We can start and have this whole conversation of why this is not going to work, or why would somebody want to listen to me? And it's that negative feeling that keeps going around and around and around, that keeps pushing you down, or generating depression, anxiety, guilt. And so, at this point in the talk, you either are ready to just bolt out that door and grab a beer, or you might be asking yourself, well, do I have imposter feelings? And so, I ask you to think about, well, no, you know I have imposter feelings. Do you have imposter feelings? Yeah, good.
Is there anyone in this room who doesn't have that?
I'm not going to ask people to out themselves if they don't have imposter feelings, but you can think about it. You can think about it.
I'm sick. I thought everybody
Yeah.
like that.
So think about a time when you attributed your success to other people or other things. Think about this, when somebody says, hey, that was a great home run you hit, and you're like, it wasn't me, it was the team. No, that was pretty sure to be you that was up there at the bat and you hit the ball or something. Or great job on that report that you made all by yourself. It wasn't me. Bob over there, he edited the report for me. It was his magic. Deferring that success to other people? What if you belittled your work or accomplishments? There's times when, I'll put something on my blog, and I'm like, oh, I blog, and people will be like, that's great, and I'm like, yeah, it's just words on a page, it is what it is, and I kind of push down the attaboy, great job type of things. Or you discounted your contributions to the overall team effort, or just the effort going on in your life. It really boils down to two main questions. One, do you actually feel like a fraud? You feel like an imposter? And two, are you unable to internalize success? If the answer is yes to those things, then yeah, you probably have some kind of imposter feelings. Now remember, they're on that whole continuum. It doesn't have to be debilitating, and if you recognize it, that's one of the steps towards actually getting better. And there are tests out there, of course. Here's a Google short URL. I'm not here to infect your computer with malware or anything like that. Or am I? Yeah. This is actually to just a Google query of imposter feelings tests. Dr. Clance has a great test, and it gives you the results right there. But as you're working through the questions, I was like, yes. I know what this is going to say at the end. Also know this, that if you have imposter feelings, as was brought up right here, you're not alone. In fact, I'm willing to bet that, there's a good proportion of you in this audience that have actually had some kind of imposter feelings at some point in your life. The problem with this is that many people with imposter feelings suffer in silence. Because for me to stand up here and say, hey, I have imposter feelings, is confirming the fact that I feel like an imposter, and then you know that I feel like an imposter, and then I am an imposter. So for me to say that, for other people to stand up and say, hey, I have imposter feelings, or I had imposter feelings, that generally doesn't happen. But just know that there are a lot of people out there, from Tom Hanks and Harry Potter to other people, that have imposter feelings. I know what his real name is, but it's so much more fun if I I'm going to see it now on my Twitter feed. Daniel Radcliffe! So also know this, that if you do have imposter feelings, at some point in your life, you can work to overcome it. And I say work to overcome it because much like many other things when dealing with our brains, there's no completely recovered from, it's changing the way that you think. It's changing the way that you receive information. It's changing the way that you process things. And it's a continual process. And the first step in the process is to recognize trigger feelings. When you are in a situation where you have to stand up and make a speech in front of other people, or when you have to write that report, or whatever it is, if you find yourself out in the, cutting the grass and then trimming the hedges and maybe, planting some new flowers and it's like December, you might want to consider, are you procrastinating? Why are you procrastinating? The next is very powerful. And it really does take that meta position. You have to recognize your feelings. You got to recognize that you're feeling anxious. You got to recognize that you're like, holy cow, who am I to do this? Once you start doing that, I urge you to talk to people. 1, talk to yourself about it. If you have that negative self-talk, that's okay. Hey, I was selected to stand up here on that stage. That means that at least 5 other people at BSidesCharm think that this is a worthwhile talk. They believe in me, so gosh darn it, I'm good enough, I'm smart enough, and
People like it.
People like it. Thank you. Thank you. I'm just actually right. Thank you. Yeah. So, counteract that negative self-talk in your head if you got it. Talk to a mentor, talk to a friend, talk to somebody, because by saying things out loud, it sometimes can lessen the anxiety, lessen the impact. And the next is talk to people that will give you honest feedback. I do this a lot with some of my friends. I do this in Nova Hackers. I do this at work. Tell me what you really think. You think it's crap, you think it's awesome, but you have to do this to people that are going to give you honest feedback. Many of you might be talking to your spouse or your boyfriend or girlfriend or kid, and you're like, hey, what do you think about this? That's great, Daddy. Well, okay, but is that really great, or are you just saying that because you want to go off and play your Xbox or something? So make sure that you're talking with somebody that will give you real-world feedback. I've already mentioned this a little bit. Take those negative thoughts of self-doubt and anxiety and reframe them. I can do this. There are people that believe in me. I'm a real big proponent of this next one, tracking our achievements, tracking your accomplishments and your progress. Get a wall calendar and put all of the cool things that you did on there. Put it in Google Calendar or whatever it is where you record it. Because you know what? Those times when you're feeling low, those times when you're feeling anxious or that you're not worthy, you can take a look at that calendar or whatever and page back through and go, damn, I did a hell of a lot of things last week, last month, last year. And that can help lessen those feelings of self-doubt. The next thing is very important. It's to take all of those things and own them. I'm speaking up on this stage right now. I made it here because those people at BSidesCharm, they believed in me. Okay, but I'm standing up here and talking. So I need to own this time, in this moment, whatever. And you have times in your lives when you also need to own the success, own your achievements, and own your progress that you made. I'll take questions at the end, sir. I'm sorry. The next thing is stop demeaning yourself, right? How many times have you said something, well, I just did this, I just posted that blog post, or I'm pretty sure you equivocate, or your language, whether it's in an email, a text, a snap, or even, spoken out loud, is very powerful in reinforcing those feelings. Using words like just, or I only formatted the report, or I only found 15 of the 17 findings in the report. All of these things lessen internally your feelings about the experience. This is a hard one. Practice accepting the compliments. Many, many times on Twitter, I will get something that says, hey, not great, whatever. I'm like, it really wasn't me. This is a derivative work of Leslie Carhart because she's so awesome. And it wasn't really me, it was Leslie. Yay! But I've tried to start saying thank you. I've tried to start, changing the way that I accept those compliments. Remember what you do well. Write it down. Keep track of it. Teach a class on it. Do a brown bag on it. Talk to your kids about it. What you do well is something you can be proud of. Those are things that other people can't take away from you. And mostly, recognize that nobody's perfect. We all, anybody read that book to your kids, Everybody Poops? Yeah, everybody does. Everybody makes mistakes. Mistakes are what help us learn, and they are. And the more you become friends with making mistakes and learning and growing and failing, the less of an impact it has on your overall psyche, the less anxious you're going to be. Cool. When I gave this talk back at B-Sides Nova a couple months ago, I stood up here and I had this great example in my head about how Edison failed and all, and I couldn't get it out of my mouth, and somebody in the audience, janitor over here, was like, hey, here's how you say it. I was like, yeah, that's what I meant. And I just kept going on with the talk. But through my negative self-talk, I keep remembering that, and I keep going over, oh, that was so stupid. Why didn't I remember that? Be okay with that. Are you a perfectionist? Or do you have perfectionist friends, colleagues, whatever? Be okay with good enough. There's never going to be a perfect product. You're always going to be able to choose a different font for or change the font size, or maybe use, italics was a little bit much for perfectionists. Maybe I should have bolded it. And people like that, people that are perfectionists, they will keep modifying the work. Draw a line in the sand if you're a perfectionist and say, you know what? That's what we're going with. I'm going to focus on other areas of my life. And if you're a perfectionist that keeps doing this, make sure that you put a time limit on revisions. Hey, that speech, that presentation is going to be tomorrow at noon. I'm not touching it after 10 o'clock in the morning. Or, 11:59. Use safe environments to practice. Because by practicing, by working through some of those things that make you anxious, that make you feel like an imposter, it can help you through those events. It makes you more comfortable with it. Nova Hackers, unallocated space, talking at conferences, just doing things with your friends, whatever it happens to be that makes you anxious or gives you that imposter feeling, work through that in a safe, supportive environment. A lot of people will practice speeches in front of mirrors. That works, unless you're critiquing yourself in the mirror going, oh, I don't like the way you said. Recognize this. This is a process. This is going to take time. We can't take a pill and everything be better. It's the way that people with imposter feelings perceive the world. And it will take time. Now, when I was researching the imposter feelings, I came across Nickolas Means' You're Not an Imposter video. Great video. I highly recommend, if you're interested in this, you take a look at his video, and there's a Google short URL to it. And in there, he's such an eloquent speaker, and he talks about his struggle with imposter feelings. And at the end of it, the funny thing is that after listening to his talk, I was like, oh, that's like exactly the talk I wanted to give. Crap, who am I to give this talk? It was a little challenging. But Nickolas has a really interesting way of talking about his struggle with imposter feelings. And what he said is that he strives to be a high-functioning imposter. And so do I. So do I. So, I wanted to say, if you have imposter feelings, strive to be a high-functioning imposter. I've got some resources here at that short URL on my website, webbreacher.com, that might be helpful to you. And thank you very much. I'll take some questions. I think we have time for a couple questions. Sir? Yes.
So you had talked about basically listing out your successes and being able to use that to kind of justify what you are doing that's good.
Yes.
Right? What happens when, say, like, I won Employee of the Month, or I got put in for this promotion, but it was something that maybe it was just my turn to come.
Sure. So I think what you're asking is, how do you deal with, from an imposter feeling standpoint, how do you deal with those successes that are attributed to you or given to you or thrust upon you that you don't really feel like you earned or you don't know why you earned, right? Employee of the Month. It's like, yeah, Bob, it's your turn to be Employee of the Month. It's April, and you don't know why. Recognize that in our world, at least in the United States, at least in this area, everybody gets participation trophies for something, right? And when we're kids, we get them for soccer. Everybody's a winner. There's going to be times when there are false things that are thrust upon you. But what I would do is I would challenge myself to figure out, one, I would ask somebody and say, you know what, why did I earn that award, or why did I get that recognition? What was the specific thing or things that I did? Because one of the things that you're asking for there is feedback. You're asking for what are the actions that I can do that I can repeat so I can get this award again, or that I can help others achieve this award. So I would go back to whomever gave it to you and ask for more information. If it's just one of those, it's your turn to be, head fry cook or whatever, That's okay. Take that, smile, nod, and move on with your life. Cool. Other questions? Yes, sir.
So, is there anything special that you can do when you see the people around you, or if you're, say, a manager, pushing you work to dispel them? Because obviously you're in psychosis and you don't want to call them out.
Right.
How do you approach that?
So the question is, how do you work with colleagues, family members, and other people around you if you notice that they are maybe doing the procrastination, having that anxiety, maybe they have imposter feelings? Obviously, it's going to depend on you and that other person's relationships. As my manager and I would work out, I would feel perfectly comfortable with him coming to me and go, hey, are you feeling anxious about that speech or this report or whatever? Maybe we can break it down. Maybe we can set some deadlines for when your revisions have to be in, so to prevent that procrastination. Or maybe, you could just talk about it. If it's somebody that's close to you, it depends on if they're willing to listen. Sometimes sending them the recorded version of this talk is what's helpful, or posting it to Facebook. What I found is, as I mentioned, I gave this talk in BSides Nova and just a couple months ago, and I did a 25-minute version of this talk, and that talk was posted to the internet thanks to Adrian and his wonderful team, and I tweeted it out, and I got such a great outpouring of, hey, I'm so glad that people are talking about this because I wouldn't have ever thought about it. So if you, sir, were to go to somebody and say, I think you might be, having imposter feelings. Do you feel this, and helping somebody work through it? They might thank you because they might not have been able to put a name to what they've been feeling. So they might also hit you or something. Yes, sir.
As a follow-on to that, have you or anybody else started looking at kids early on to head off these feelings early on?
So the point is, if we can head off the imposter feelings or the situations that might lead up to imposter feelings in young people, kids, young adults, then maybe we could prevent imposter feelings, would you say? I haven't looked into that. I do have a psychology degree. That's my undergraduate degree, but I've been in computers way too long to do a scientific study at this point. So, but there are lots of other research out. There's lots of other research out there about imposter phenomenon and imposter feelings. It'd be interesting to look at. Anybody else? Okay. Well, thank you very much, everybody.